Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Senor Nerd Podcast. I have here with me Ramon,
Hey,
Ro,
Howdy.
and today we're here to discuss the latest episode of The Last of Us, episode 8. And before we start our review, kind of want to throw a question to Ramon or Ro, whoever wants to answer it. If you were to eat a part of me, which part would you eat?
your legs, dude. What?
Yeah, okay, that's a
There's
good
the
choice.
most. There's the most there. Let's go. If you guys
What
don't know,
about-
Carlos is not like super tall, but he's a little taller. So all the meats in the legs.
What about you, Ro? What part of me would you like to eat?
I don't know. Your cheeks, probably.
Okay.
On your face. On your
Which
face.
one?
On your face. On your
Well-
face.
Yeah, I know what you meant was my ass, but you know, but but there's a lot to chew on this episode, so let's just get started. So, I thought it was a great episode, especially after coming from the last episode 7, which, in my opinion, was not a very good episode, and I still stand by my decision to say that. But this episode turned it around for me, man. I was getting nervous, but this one kind of got me back on point. So, what did you guys think about it, Ramon, Ro?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, yes, we finally got cannibals, right? I think we had mentioned that a bunch of episodes ago about how we just, we're waiting to see the point where we ran into people that were desperate enough that they were going to start eating each other. So not just for that reason, but yeah, definitely this episode was really great. And I did enjoy the last episode, but I think if anything, that also kind of really aided with this one, because I feel like by the time we're done discussing this, again, one of the best parts about this episode as well is Ellie definitely taking on her own and, acting out, doing her thing, really playing that survival role and then some awesome fuckery role too. So
Yeah, and then I like it. I loved this episode. I thought it was awesome, and I definitely always like seeing how different people react in these type of situations, whether it's this or like in the Mist, how they had like a similar like religious tie into it. But I thought it was awesome, and sadly because of this episode, now I think that in the last episode, if we wouldn't have had it, this would still have been exactly the same. So it's just kind of weird that I think that if we took out the last episode, that it really would still been the same, which meant that it kind of didn't really add too much. But I'm glad that they still had it because I definitely got a lot from Ellie the last episode. But
Well, you know what this episode had that the last one didn't? A guy named David. And you guys know what I say about people that are named David. Never trust a David, especially if they're preachers. and I definitely want to give credit to that actor because, man, him and Ellie, man, they were carrying this whole episode, and I just love the interactions between both of them. I mean, we don't have to like jump that ahead, but just right off the beginning, like this guy to me seemed like he was like a cool guy. I thought he was kind of like, he was a preacher. He was taking care of the people. He seemed like somebody that could, you could reason with him when he was having that conversation with Ellie about like, hey, like leave whoever you're with. We'll take care of you. Like I was about ready to sell my house and go join that cult. So I don't know about you guys, but that David guy in the beginning definitely was selling me on whatever he was pitching.
well, I mean, I guess just so we don't get too crazy ahead of ourselves. Yeah, I mean, like, I mean, the show started kind of quick, right? Like, you got back to where Ellie's kind of like still panicking about what to do about Joel because he's still injured in that basement. And then she goes out to hunt because they're at this point where they probably need food, which is kind of really cool to see her being able to take that one buck down. And then eventually, she shoots the deer runs away, and then you meet David and his partner, who are his friend, who just stumble onto the deer. They know that Ellie's already there, or someone's already there. Obviously, the deer got shot. And yeah, that's kind of where you get introduced to this guy who like seems to be like he's gonna win her over, right? Obviously she starts super defensive. She's holding the gun. She's acting big and tough. She's playing along with the whole like I have a group too. Like we're all really hungry. And then you right away see the dynamic of like David is a smooth talker, like a silver tongue, like little finger. So I really like them. But I really like them for that beginning. I just for that reason, because you already kind of sense that he was going to try to be that guy who's like, hey, trust me.
yeah. I definitely got the same thing, and then I definitely saw kind of where Ellie has gotten to that point. because she pretty much did everything right. She ran into people. She was kind of safe. She definitely played it safe. She was pointing her weapon at them, and she was stern. She pretty much did everything that she needed to do, and she got antibiotics out of it in order to try to save Joel, and the fact that she did shoot the buck on the first shot too. So
Yeah.
Well,
so
because something that
definitely got
David,
from Ellie.
because something that David kept saying is that things happen for a reason. So you almost have to believe that Ellie shooting that deer running away, and then her stumbling on them was actually something that was supposed to happen. Because if that had not happened, she would not have been able to get the antibiotics to go and save Joel. So it was kind of like going back to what David was saying. Even though he was using it more for himself and his purpose, like in reality, it was like Ellie was supposed to meet these people, because if not, she would have never gotten what she needed to save Joel's life. And I don't think Joel would have made it without having those antibiotics. So yeah, so it's kind of like it all kind of worked out at the end, even though she went through some terrible, terrible things.
But I like the way that it made me feel, because at that point we didn't really know who David was outside of that intro scene, right, where we hear that he's somewhat of a preacher, basically makes a girl, we think we makes a girl cry, because what he's talking about at that point is just so heavy. And then you ultimately find out that basically her dad is dead. And then you already kind of sense between David and the other guy that there's something fishy going there, just based on the conversation of like, are you still with me? Are you still with me? I know this is tough, but we have to do this. Later there we find out where fucking they fed her dad. But yeah, like you said, he said everything happens for a reason. And then I really enjoy the part, which was like just a little bit ahead of them finding out that was the guy that Joel killed, who had stabbed him with the bat. So that was a crazy trip for me, because I just assumed we were going to run into this crazy group of people in this town. But then, you all of a sudden find out that the people who were at the college, and, basically ended up stabbing Joel were these people. Exactly. And then that caused that intro scene of finding out that ultimately, the father died. And then later we find out that he got eaten. So yeah, crazy, man.
Yeah. And then whenever I see in a show or a movie, when they're trying to introduce like a religious aspect of it, or especially like in a weird type of show like this, that's
like Red Flag.
Apocalyptic, I definitely always jump into like, oh, there's gonna be some weird thing happening, whether it's this show or like the other one with the midnight
Mass.
Midnight Mass, another incredible show.
Or The Mist, or like there's like a ton of shows where they always end up kind of turning it a little too radical or too extremist or occult. So I from the start I already thought like, oh, this is gonna go in one of those directions, or something where it's gonna happen because of it, or they're gonna be cannibals, or they're going to like all kill themselves at some point or something.
Well, I mean, Ellie says it, like, what did you pick preacher because it rhymes with teacher? But, if you think about it, because the guy, David, he said that he didn't find religion until after, the whole world went down. I felt like he found religion because he found out how to quickly weaponize religion, man. And I feel like when you find religion and people need to hear the word of God and you're preaching it, you're definitely going to either get respect from people or get people to listen to you or treat you people in a different way, because obviously like we're not going around and slapping preachers around. We treat them with some sort of respect. So I think he as soon as he came up on this new world, he must have came across a scenario where he's like, oh man, the more I talk about religion or the more I speak these words, the more people will listen to me, follow me, respect me, treat me in a different hierarchy than everybody else. So that was kind of interesting, man. It's just kind of like, you don't think that, right? The world's ending, so let me pick up a Bible and all of a sudden start memorizing everything about it.
But I mean, I guess the cool thing is like as the episode progresses, and especially towards the end, like you find out what kind of person David is, right? So to me, it makes perfect sense, because it's just like Raul said, it's like in these shows that end up having like a crazy twist to them or something like that. Like Carlos said, people take not necessarily advantage of that, but they sometimes go to religion. And for those people that are twisted, they have like ultimately evil intentions or some sort of perverted like mindset, religion is a perfect way to kind of accomplish that goal. So yeah, definitely very heavy. Like I mean, yes, I am not always a big fan of seeing those in shows, but like in this way, it's always perfect when you take that power that some person can get through religion or through preaching and then twist it around to where like num 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 like whatever works for them, you know. But yeah, I think that just really speaks to not only the group of people, but then just David and his kind of feel that he needs the power, and sadly that's a thing that he's taking advantage of innocent people, you know, people who really do depend on that word.
Yeah, and then the other big thing of it too is that like when he was talking to Ellie after the while they were waiting for the antibiotics, I know that he was. It seemed like there was a chance that at some point he might convince her, and then if they went back and he tried again and kind of was persistent with all of it, I felt that there might have been a point where he convinced her, especially if Joel wasn't recovering. But I definitely like the fact that I guess you could say that in this episode I definitely became proud of Ellie, of the fact that she kind of did everything that she did, because when all those guys did go back to look for Joel to pretty much kill him and to bring Ellie back, she kind of did everything right again with trying to use a horse to kind of draw them away and keep them away from Joel, to protect Joel. And sadly, like, it didn't all go according to plan, but she kind of did everything that she should have done, or kind of did the right things, even if the execution wasn't exactly there. But again, when it's a group, it's hard to get away.
Ramon, so you're the only one here that has somebody in the medical field that can actually answer this question. The way that Ellie administered the antibiotics, was that the correct way of doing it? Even herself, she didn't know about it. So
well, I am not Kiara, so I can't answer that, and obviously I'm not going to walk away and ask her. But no, yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things that I you know, like Raul was saying, to like she was doing everything right. I think at that point, even if she wasn't doing it right, you kind of hope that was the best way, because I mean, ultimately we know that it worked. Yeah, I can't professionally answer that, but it was just like, yeah, I thought about that too, because even she's like panicking, right? And she's like, what do I do with this? And I mean, if you were untrained, like, you know, we are in that, this is like that specific field, like, where would you put it? Like, what would you do with it, right? So I think that kind of made the most sense to me.
I mean, we know Raul would go for the cheeks because that's his favorite part.
I honestly, like,
part first
for penicillin, because when I went to basic training, like, that was one of the like 80 shots that we got. We got a shot of penicillin, and that's the one that was like in our ass. So generally with like shots and stuff like that, you want to put it in a big muscle group. So like that wasn't the wrong place to put it, because it still works, but it's not the best place to put it. But it still works.
But it seemed ideal. Obviously, it was like the actual wound itself. So I mean, if anything, like I said, in that panic, I would have maybe done the same thing. But man, you really knew he was that freaking out of it, and that freaking hurt, because stabbed him and everything, and dude's just like, ugh.
Dude, you would have thought, like, you would have thought she gave him an adrenaline shot on the side after she left, because man, like, I was not going to believe that he could be capable of getting up, and like, he sure proved me wrong, man. Not only did he get up, but he took out like 3 different guys while doing it.
But you know, I was skeptical about that too, because I mean, again, that's what I guess what I was pointing to. Like, she stabbed him in his actual wound, and dude's just like barely grunted, you know. So I was thinking the same thing too when she left him the knife. I'm like, how in the world, by the time some grown ass man gets there, like, how's he gonna have the energy, right? He's gonna be laying there. There's nothing he could do. And yeah, I mean, he proved us wrong, and it was gradual. That was the nice thing to see too. It wasn't like right from the beginning he's like doing jujitsu and, you know, with the knife and stuff. But like, he definitely built up to that. So it was pretty nice to see like his progression of like getting his strength back.
Because I feel like you always hear them talk about like, oh, Joe did horrible things, and, you know, he did things that, you know, no man should ever do. So it was kind of nice to get that side of him, like, where the F is Ellie, and if you don't tell me, I'm gonna like rip you apart. And dude, that was just crazy the way he interrogated those people. Yeah, like, go ahead.
Yeah, and a person like Joel, where you know them, where you know that he's done a lot of like killing and a lot of terrible things per se. When you get somebody like that is searching for somebody that they care about or something that they care about, you're definitely you know that they're gonna pretty much go through all the lengths in order to find out where that person is or whatever. So in this case, like I none of that surprised me, and yeah, it was entertaining to see. But then also I thought it was interesting the fact that after he told them like where they were, that he just killed them. And then didn't really care about the other guy too, and just went and killed the other guy too.
See, that I was thinking about that as that scene was happening, right? Because yes, like Carlos said, he was definitely more worried about Ellie at this point. That's what was kind of running his body, like, his adrenaline was just the whole like, where the fuck is Ellie? And that's how you know he loves her, because he's like so crazy about like trying to figure it out that he's going back to his fucked up tactics of like interrogating this guy, right? And then obviously after he beat the other guy and has them watching, because it's more effective that way, right? Because if one's not going to tell him, then after that, you bet your ass the other guy's going to tell him. But yeah, like you, Raul, like I think I definitely had that same response when he actually kills them too. I was like, fuck, like he killed them. Like, but at the same time, then I had to remember, I'm like, these are people that regardless, Joel already knows that Ellie's missing and she's most likely in danger because she gave him the knife, right? She would have never given the knife and says, kill whoever the fuck is coming at me, right? So that was the one thing that I remembered. I'm like, oh, that's how he knows. Like, that's how he knows these people are, like, dangerous regardless. So, yeah, I think at that point, he already trusts Ellie enough that if she gave me a knife to kill whoever's going to come get me, then obviously they all deserve to die. And, I mean, he wasn't wrong. They were fucked up people, but, I mean, debatable.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah. And I mean, even going a little bit more back with David, I know when they were looking for Ellie and Joe, he says, if you find the girl, don't kill her. And he was very affirmative about saying, like, do not shoot her. If you have some payback that you want to get, go and find the other guy. But when did you finally, when did you think, like, this priest was like David was not who he was meant to be? Like, for me, it was when they went back to the, to their little group area, and he came with the deer, and the whole community is kind of quiet and it's looking at him, and then the girl's dad that had just been killed, she's kind of like saying like, hey, we should go and get vengeance, and then he goes up to her and he like slaps her. I mean, was that the moment for you guys where like and then like the fact that it's like you feel like your father's gone but you still have a a daddy in me, like that's the way I took it. I know he says father, but clearly it was like, you still have a daddy in me, which is like, obviously, now that we know how the episode ended, I mean, that was probably in a very, like, sexual undertones that he also said that to her. So that was kind of that David guy's just crazy.
But I think you're right. I think that was the point. Because, like I said, in the beginning, you're still kind of like, hey, this guy, obviously he was a preacher. He didn't say anything crazy. He was there to console the girl when she was crying about her dad. And then you see him in a situation with Ellie that he's kind of becoming trustworthy. He's explaining why he's the leader of this group. Everything's making sense. Obviously, we know the twist exists, but I think in general, like, there was no crazy signs. I guess maybe when he was just telling his friend, like, oh, you still believe in me, right? You're still in this with me. But I didn't think it was regarding that, or it wasn't something that fucked up. And yes, that scene, I think, definitely put me in that weird, awkward place where I'm like, oh shit, this guy's not only like thinks he's like the leader of this group, but he's also violent about it, which just goes to show you that throws you into a whole new thing. And then like you said, a little perverted too, like a little that's bad.
Yeah. The honestly for me, I thought that a different part was kind of giving me a hint that seemed kind of weird to me a little bit. So when the deer was shot, I definitely got that. I understood the conversation and everything that happened there, and then he tried to convince her to go back with them to the town or whatever. And then when he was so adamant about keeping her alive, I thought that was a little weird, because like everyone was like more like revenge and all that stuff. So the fact that they were so vengeful and murderous, I guess, and the fact that he was so adamant about her not being touched, kind of seemed a little kind of weird to me.
No, because, you're right.
Like I don't really understand why he wouldn't want her to die that badly, which kind of, I don't know, made it seem weird, because she hadn't really displayed a lot or really done much.
Yeah.
And at that point, I didn't really get a lot of like why he would be so like religiously trying to save her or like
Yeah.
spiritually or whatever. So it's just weird for me at that point.
Yeah, because you're right. Like, unless I go back to the episode and start counting how many other children or teenagers were in that room, like, there is the possibility, because we know that he's a pedophile. Like, he saw Ellie and he was like, oh, like, somebody knew.
Yeah.
Like, let's protect this because, children are so rare in this world. So you're right, bro. Like, right there, those could have been, like, he was laying the grounds to, like, oh, keep this, little gift for me that I'm not going to tell nobody about later, and I'll put her in a nice cage and I can do whatever I want with her.
Now you just want to make me jump to the end and talk about that. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, I mean, oh my god, like, the guy turned out to be terrible.
I mean, talk about it, man. Talk about that point where she's in that cage and he starts paying back everything because there's no reason to drag this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I really like that scene, right? Like after they capture her and then they put her in that cage, and yeah, first of all, like there's a whole thing of like, why am I in this cage? So I mean, to me that made sense. It was a jail system. Like it seems like in any of these communities, you're always prone to have someone that goes a little crazy sometimes. But I just didn't expect all that. And so anyways, that scene was great too, because again, this is the David episode, right? We keep talking about how he's just going out of his way to really try to convince Ellie to like join him, right? And obviously now we know why, because he's like a big old pervert and all kinds of crazy. But like, I really enjoyed that little moment, the moments of him trying to convince her, and then every time that something would click in her mind, like she would like, oh, you little fucker, like, especially the scene where like he says a couple things, but then there's the scene when he finally like reaches over and grabs her hand and he's like, think of our future together, and she gives him like, oh, it's like that. It's easy. Like the whole camera shivered. And that reaction, again, she's so awesome actor. Like she's so good at what she's doing there. But I think just because of the intensity of David and then her at that moment, like I was just really happy that it took us from this moment of disgust to us. Like, already I'm like, oh, you fucking suck. And now you're talking about like taking her. And then you get the clear picture of he definitely wants her sexually, right? And so it just becomes like a really, really, really like that kind of moment where you just hate it. But it's so good. And, I don't know who wants to take us onto the second part of that scene, because it gets
I was gonna ask, what did you like, Ro? What did you think about Troy Baker playing, the second in command to David's group? Did you like that?
I honestly, like, it didn't hit me that it was him at first, and I should have recognized him like right away, but like with the weird haircut and the beard, like I just did it. I don't know why I did it, but I thought it was awesome. I thought it was awesome that they included him in the show, like in the episode, because he was the voice of Joel for whoever didn't know. Like in the video game, he was the voice of Joel, and he's done a ton of like voice work, and he's like a big voice actor. So I thought it was awesome that they included him in here, because like the lady from the Fireflies, she was the actual like voice actor for that role as well. And then I'd be interested to see if they included like any of the other voice actors and stuff like that. But I thought it was an awesome, I guess, an awesome way to include them, because it's I don't know, it's so different from what it was. But like I thought that he like did it actually pretty well, considering that he was a cannibal, like religious believer.
No, yeah, people have been saying that they've been putting like all the people from The Last of Us as like villains role. But I mean, you saw the thing with him at the end credits. Like he was happy. He's like, I would have been a clicker if you would have cast me as a clicker. So he was really happy to be part of the show. And I think anybody that's been playing the games probably was happy to see him. Me and you don't have that sort of attachment to us, but I'm sure if I had been more familiar with him or had played the games, I would have been like, oh, like I would have been like hitting my wife, like, look at him, like you shut your mouth now, let him talk. Even though I don't know if he had like any crazy amount of lines, but I mean, we know we won't be seeing him anymore after this episode, sadly. So maybe they will make him a clicker later in the future.
And I doubt it, because her normal voice sounds so much like Ellie's voice in the video game. But like, I wonder if they'll throw like Ashley Johnson in there at some point. Who's
No,
the girl that does the voice of Ellie in the game? And I'm
you
a
know when.
critter. She's like a critical role person, which is
Oh,
why I
okay.
know.
You know when Joe finally found the community and he pretty much found where they stack all the meat. What did you think he was gonna find? Like, I mean, he found the horse, and then I didn't know if he was gonna find people or not, and if he was gonna find people, I expected one, but there was three bodies. From looking at them, two of them felt like they were kids, children. Can any of you confirm if they were just adults or children or teenagers? Especially because he was going through some stuff, and I felt like he found some toys or something that belonged to kids. So it kind of, for me, it assumed that they were kids, also like hanging upside
That
down. But I don't know.
that's a good point because that scene, yeah, where he finds like the backpack with the little toy attachment and stuff. I was wondering how
I
that
thought
was
that was
relevant.
Ellie's.
I don't
Was it at
know.
least? Oh,
Oh no,
maybe
Yeah,
that was.
yeah,
maybe
yeah,
maybe it was.
I think that was Ellie's bag.
Okay, maybe yeah. See that explains it better because like I think that was my initial thought. It's like how is this significant? So that would make more sense. But yeah, no, Carlos. When I saw the bodies, I didn't think they were kids. I mean, at least to me, they didn't look
Yeah.
like kids. But I was shocked to see bodies, right?
Oh yeah,
Because
no.
so far, it's like yeah. Once you find out they eat people too, because it's all like you find that out around the same time. My thing is like it was never like disclosed. Like it's like the whole town didn't know about this. It was only David and a few people, right? And obviously they're not. I don't think they were purposely killing anybody on purpose to eat them, but it was more as it happened, or we don't
Well,
know that yet because I mean they put have potentially.
David mentioned that when he sent out his group to go find food in the city, like, I mean, was he really talking about like food, or was he talking about like go find people and kill them,
Maybe
even if we
yeah,
don't? So it's just, yeah, you
that's
don't know
true.
about it, man. And that's the thing about cannibalism. It's like, not saying that you couldn't do that to survive, but I feel like once you introduce that, and let's say like we're in a scenario where we're hungry, we've already like been eating humans. Let's say instead of going out to go get food, like I could just feel like somebody being like, well, why should we spend a day going out in the cold, potentially not finding anything, come back and still continue to starve when Raul in the corner is looking really good and he's kind of sick? Like, why don't we just go finish it up?
Oh
So
no,
to me,
Raul, run away!
Oh
to me,
no!
so
I'm
to
too
me, that's
plump.
the so to me, that's the problem with cannibalism. Once you open that door, it's like, okay, well, why can't we continue to have that door open? It's like, when do you close it? And I think that's the problem. Like, clearly they were looking out for deer, but it's just like part of me kind of wonders, like, how hard were you looking for that deer?
I mean, it says a lot about like a group of people like that could ultimately be okay with eating other people. I always think about those in any kind of movie and shows that are that like not the end of the world, but like you're stuck somewhere. Like Gilligan's Island should have had some cannibalism in there, and I'm sure it did as a joke at one point. But it's like that whole idea that it's like, yeah, sometimes you might be so like desperate, and then just the animal population's not significant enough, or even grub, like bugs, like anything like that. But it seems kind of crazy that you would resort to eating people before you, I don't know, start eating wood or something, or like a plant based something. Like, dude, I don't even know.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. I mean, that's how you know that we're not like perturbed in that way. We're no
No,
Jeffrey
not at
Dahmer.
all. Don't look at my shirt, guys.
Okay, Jeffrey
that I
Dahmer.
that I keep open at all times of the day.
You don't want the smell to go through. Yep.
No, I mean, I was thinking like Joe was gonna come and save the day, but that wasn't the case. Like, Ellie managed to get herself out of the situation. So, man, applause to her, man, because you always think about the will for a human being to survive, and like she proved it, man. Like, she had the will, she didn't want to live, so she pulled every card that she could, and I mean, she got herself out of that situation. I thought that was really cool and smart of her, and brave, and how quick she was about it. So I like that a lot when I was watching the episode.
Yeah, and then like in the after show part, I saw that the showrunner guy he was talking about how they made it seem like Joel was gonna go and save the day, and that's exactly what we all thought. But like that's kind of part of why I said that I was so proud of Ellie in this episode, because like she got herself out of this situation on her own without Joel, and that kind of shows like her growth, and that's a part where I think it was so relevant to have the last episode, because there you kind of see like kind of where she started, because that's the youngest that we're probably gonna see her, where she's still kind of young, innocent, she's kind of like a troublemaker, but you see that the guy has like he sees the potential in her, and then here you kind of see the some of that realized potential, and then especially at the end when she finally like finds Joel, like I thought that was fucking wonderful because you could see the terror that she had and like all of the feelings that were there, and then how the relief when she finally found Joel. But yeah, with the cannibal part, like in the shed, like I didn't know that there was gonna be bodies there. I didn't know what he was gonna see, but it in a way it was kind of it was well done because like there was some sort of like eerie like scariness to it, even just like saran wrapped like torsos or whatever that were just hanging there. But go ahead.
No, because I mean that's what makes me nervous about, we're finally gonna get the final episode next Sunday, and I'm nervous because first of all I heard it's only like 50 minutes long, and I don't know if this is gonna wrap up the first story of the game. And the reason why it kind of also makes me nervous big time is that I finally got to a point where I believe Joe will do anything for Ellie, and I feel like now the show can really start because like, hey, now that they built this bond and he doesn't want anything to happen to her, let's do another 5 episodes and see what kind of trouble they can get into. But sadly, I'm kind of led to believe the next Sunday is going to be the final episode. So I'm hoping, part of me is hoping that, hey, they prove me wrong and then decide to like not finish the story and maybe like push it a little bit more. But also part of me feels like they're probably going to be good about trying to wrap it up for the first season. So I don't know. I don't know where it's going to land.
I don't know. I mean, I think, that's definitely where it's at now. I mean, obviously we're still skipping like a little part in there, but yeah, that was a beautiful scene where like Joel finally meets up with Ellie and, he calls her baby girl, which is like, I think what he used to call his daughter. And it's just like, it's the first time that he like
That's my nickname for Ro, baby girl.
Oh man, that makes me cry. No, but yeah, no, it's one of those things that you see that and you hear that you already know where it's coming from. You know that he's lowered all his defenses, that he loves her at this point, that he cares for her, and it was a beautiful way to kind of end that. But then going back to just what it took her to really earn her escape. Oh my fucking god, like dude, David deserved it. Both of those guys deserved it. But yeah, like that scene where she finally they take her out, he comes back with the friend, David comes back with the friend, takes her out, and they're about to lay her down on the freaking chopping table. That was exciting to see because even I was wondering how she was going to get away from the whole situation, assuming that because she was still caged, unless she figured out some crazy way. But it was great. It was great for her. I mean, to see her take on like 2 grown-ass men. Obviously, Yeah. I mean, see, even that, I was gonna skip straight to the cleaver attack, but you're right. Like that was pretty ingenious of her to pull off. Because again, why wouldn't you trust that situation at that point, even for a second, right? Because David did doubt it, but even for a second, it threw him off guard. The friend was like, David, like, no, this can't happen. And even later when he was questioning how she faked it, so it was a really good tactic and it worked because then she got to chopping and what better way for them to die than being like sushi down,
So just so we all are clear on it, when David finally got pinned Ellie down, he was gonna rape her, right? Like that was gonna happen, right?
Oh, dude,
I'm not imagining that, right?
Yeah,
no, you're not. Like that's probably one of the most horrific type of things.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that they gave us enough to make us think she's gonna be able to stop it, hopefully. Because if not, if you straight up thought that he was gonna just assault her, I don't know if I would have been able to handle that, but.
No,
especially at this one because I you can say I fell in love with Ellie. I think she's fucking killing it. And that would have just broken me. For this
and I mean, for anybody that's not convinced 100% that David was a piece of shit, think about the scenario. Ellie just killed his second in command. The whole cabin's on fire, getting burned, and he's just so thirsty for her that he's willing to not shoot her and pin her down just so he could try to do that. So yeah, it's a horrible scene, man. So
that moment with the fire starting, that's you seeing him turn. Yeah. That's you seeing him turn into the monster that he really is. You really see his whole facade exposed because great job on her. She found something to be able to possibly kill him, and then that fire log or whatever ends up on that corner, and right away you see the conflict right? But like you said, Carlos, he was so thirsty that he was just like, he was like, okay, this is the problem. Clearly, this shit's burning down. But let me get to Ellie, right? And that's just basically, you saw exactly how fucked up he was, because obviously he stopped caring about the people that he was leading. He stopped caring about the town at that point. It was all about his fixation with Ellie. And yeah, it's really infuriating to see, which is why it was even more rewarding to see what she did to him. So
no, and I know a lot of people were complaining about like, why didn't more people come after them, especially if the building was burned. But in my head, I built a story that Joel got to anybody that could have intervened in that situation. So like by the time Joel reaches her, like, he's already like disposed of whoever he needed to dispose of.
I just thought it wasn't enough time.
No, and considering that the building was empty, I figured that, and there's two things. I figured that they were all kind of like wherever they live or stay or whatever, and considering the type of environment, I also figured that they probably have like pretty strict rules on like people kind of being out and about and stuff like that. But to kind of mention from what you said too, with that David guy. Like the fact that he didn't like care about the fire or anything like that, like it really also shows you his ego, and how highly he thinks of himself. Because like, I'm not gonna worry about no fire. I'm not gonna worry about this second in command guy that just got like cleaver to death. Like all I care about is kind of getting what I feel that I deserve, which obviously he ended up being cleavered himself, which is what I think.
Yeah, and he even mentioned it, like, he's like, oh, baby, he's like, this is what I like, is the chase. So it's like, I mean, he was getting so into it at that point that, nothing mattered. No, yeah, Carlos, I had that thought too, and I was discussing it with a friend at work, and it was one of those things too, with the whole fire. I guess in the game, it's a whole scene, right? You're like, I think he was telling me that you're escaping from David as he's trying to like get you. And, I guess if you think about it from those regards, like people who have played the game probably think of that scene as a very long scene, because you're obviously it's the game. So you play until you die. And if you die, you come back again and you play it again. But it's like, I didn't think that scene was too long in the show where I thought people would eventually come in. Like, right. I mean, eventually they would, but I think just that short amount of time, it happened so quick. And I just maybe like the town, everybody else was like far in the town, or maybe they're like doing their things that, besides maybe, his henchmen kind of walking around. But I mean, so far there was like, 3 of them dead. So I don't know how many, like Joel might have killed already the rest of them. So maybe there wasn't anybody like practical to run around, but I don't know. That's just so crazy that he let the restaurant or the cabin or whatever it was, like, go to flames for his.
Yeah. And if anybody listens to this episode and they want to play a fun game, go ahead and grab your friend and play this episode in the background and take a shot for every time we say David's name, because you will be drunk and going to the hospital. But no, man, I had a lot of fun. It's kind of sad to know that next Sunday we're getting our last episode, at least for for another year and a half, however long it takes them for season 2. But I'm glad that I was able to do this journey with you guys. And, maybe next Sunday we'll get together right after the episode and like cuddle, cry, say our frustrations. But no, thank you guys for doing this. Unless you guys have any final thought, let me know.
I love the episode. I love Joel. I love Ellie. I love the creators of the show. I think they're doing an amazing job. And HBO definitely knows how to pick the right showrunners to pick the right shows, because they have a lot of good ones.
They're not even paying us, Raul. They're not paying us yet.
I know.
I mean, but yeah, no, I definitely, this episode was good. I really enjoyed it. I think I watched it twice just randomly again, and I think the second time was just as good. Like, I think it gave you a little bit of everything, but just seeing Ellie kind of survive all that and just hold her own, and then, chop a dude's face up, worth it. So.
All right. Well, before we go, nobody asked me what body part of you guys I would eat, but Ramon, there was a few times where if you're listening and you're watching this on Spotify and you can see us, there's a few times where like Ramon put his face right up on the camera. And let me just say this from like Raul's standpoint, I also wanted to take a bite of those cheeks. So that's my answer, Ramon's cheeks.
Obsession with y'all's cheeks.
So everybody have a good night, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Good night.